Welcome to Temple Talk from the Temple Institute, Jerusalem, Israel. Rabbi Chaim Richman here together with Yitzchak, Reuven, and today, the 24th day of the month of Tevet, 5779. It happens to be the 1st of January, 2019, and this week, Shabbat Parshat Va'era, the second Torah portion in the incredibly dynamic, fast-moving, exciting book of Shemot, Exodus. And it's also the Sabbath of the blessing of the new moon, because Sunday night and Monday will be the Rosh Chodesh, the new moon of the month of Shvat. Some people are asking, do we say Happy New Year as observant Torah Jews? Yes, I think I'm comfortable with that label today. What is our take on the Gregorian New Year, or what some people call the secular New Year? Well, to me, I'll just be honest with you, it's a random calendar day, because we don't count the years according to this calendar. We count the years according to the Hebrew calendar, in which we're now counting 5,779 years since the creation. But I want you to know that there was a very holy rabbi whose name was, he was called the Apter Rebbe, and his name was Rabbi Israel from the city of Apt. He was called the Ohev Yisrael, based on his famous work, The Lover of Israel. He was one of the major students of the Baal Shem Tov, and on this new year, he used to bless everyone, Shana Tova. He was very, very devout, Orthodox Hasidic Rebbe, and on New Year's Day, the secular New Year, he used to say to everybody, Shana Tova. So they asked him, what is this that you're blessing us on the day that the nations celebrate their New Year? So he answered a very deep thing. He said that today is the last day of judgment for the nation of Israel. He said that in heaven, the secret is that the period of judgment extends from Rosh Hashanah, which is in Tishrei, which, just as you know, usually falls around September, all the way till now. Why? Because when the Holy One, blessed be He, sees how the world celebrates New Year, and then he sees how Israel celebrates New Year's, then that is a very great merit for them. Because on the Rosh Hashanah night, the people of Israel cry out the verse from Psalms 24, La Hashem ha'aretzum lo'o, tevel v'yoshveva. To Hashem is the world and everything in it. And that is it in a nutshell. In other words, it's a struggle. Life is a struggle over the question of what is our priority, what is our direction? Are we living for Hashem, around Hashem, with Him at the center, everything being focused on our recognition, acknowledgement, and devotion to Him all the time? Or is He maybe a hobby, maybe,
An errand boy?
Is He an errand boy? Is He someone to service our dreams and aspirations, or are we here to service His dreams and aspirations? And that theme, I think, is something that's very, very powerfully apparent as a central thread in this week's Torah portion. It's also a direct connection from what we were talking about last week. In last week's program, we got all hot and bothered, all hot under the collar about this editorial that was in the New York Times, where some philosophy professor was entertaining the possibility that perhaps it doesn't matter if man would become extinct, because it would benefit the animals that we're hurting so badly, and also because maybe it's we don't really deserve to live. That was the philosophical question that he raised, and the thing that and we talked about that, I think, for a whole half of last week's program. And the thing that I find disturbing the most about that is that it leaves out, not only does it leave out Hashem from the equation, that we believe the whole reason that God brought the world into existence is for the sake of man, that man is at the center of the universe, at the center of creation, and and the whole reason for creation was for man to experience God and to learn who God is. And so the whole thing is about man's relationship with God, and that whole side of the equation, that man should be seeking to develop and nurture a relationship with God. That's missing from that whole debate. We're going to talk about how this concept figures prominently in this week's Torah portion, But here also, I mean, I think in the dichotomy of the two New Years, if you look at it, either you have a New Year's Eve of ribaldry. I don't want to accuse anyone of wild, reckless abandonment, drunkenness, and all those things that characterize, for many people, what New Year's Eve is all about. And even, unfortunately, I'll be honest with you, in the state of Israel, amongst the secular, there is a tendency for some quarters, some sectors of the populace, some people to celebrate the secular New Year's Eve. But you see, at least I know here in Israel that that's part of the ongoing spiritual struggle and emerging awareness of Israel's inner spiritual struggle to identify with its roots and to understand that. So that's all part of the redemptive process that's going on. But in general, as the Apter Rav said, why he used to bless people with Happy New Year on this day is because this is the day of distinction, of how is it that we are wanting to run our lives. Are we wanting to run our lives because Hashem created the world and that's all there is to it? That's all there is to it. And therefore I am. Therefore I am. Not because I think, like the philosopher would say, but because Hashem created the world. That's why I'm here. And that's what Rosh Hashanah in Tishrei is all about, the birthday of Adam. And therefore, and we talked about this ad nauseum. I understand I won't get into it again now. Around Rosh Hashanah time is where we really, really heckle you about this. But it's true. It's true that the Rosh Hashanah, right, the Jewish New Year, being the birthday of Adam, of Adam, the first man, what it really means is that, therefore, it's the birthday of responsibility. And the word that I like to use even more, accountability. Because if man is the center of creation, Hashem created the world in order for man to grow close to God, then that means that we're responsible for the world as well. And the way a lot of people behave on New Year's Eve, January 1st, is the opposite of taking responsibility and accountability for the world. So that's all I'll say about that for now. But I think Yitzchak might want to say something.
No, I think you've said it all, Rabbi. It's been a great temple talk so far. Don't go away.
You've been a great audience so far.
Don't go away.
All right. Well, this is Shabbat Mevarchim. That means that we're getting ready for the month of Shvat, which is the month of renewal. And in the meantime, this week's Torah portion. The whole book of Exodus is such a total departure from what we were used to in Bereshit, right? Mm-hmm. And again, one of the major things that we like to do on Temple Talk, that we do, because of who we are, is we are living according to the Parsha. We're living according to what we feel, what is resonating, the energy that we're drawing from the Torah portion. Because as we've continue to discuss over the years, it's not a history book, it's the book of our yet as unfolding lives. So Genesis was all about creating a basis. It was all about the foundation of everything. It was about setting down the borders of reality, and the spiritual work of the forefathers was creating a vessel to hold Hashem's light. But there is so much that had to happen yet. And the whole concept of what Hashem told to Avraham at the covenant between the portions in Parshat Lech Lecha about the fact that his children were going to be in servitude in a foreign land is what the Egyptian exile is all about. And the Egyptian exile is a very, very hard thing to understand, because there was a tremendous amount of suffering. And in a way, as the sages describe, the Egyptian exile was like the shorish, the roots, the prototype, if you would, the template of all the exiles that Israel has gone through. And so too, the redemption from Egypt, which changed the world, is the prototype, the template for all future redemptions, except for the fact that the prophet says that the final redemption is going to outshine completely the miracles of the Exodus from Egypt. So in this Parshat Va'era that we are learning about now, in this week's Torah portion, we find the majority of the plagues. And the thing about the plagues, is like, why did Hashem have to do it? And it's one of the most popular questions when we study the Torah and all the issues regarding the exodus from Egypt. Okay, Israel, it was decreed that Israel had to be slaves there for a certain amount of time, and what we went through there, we went through. It's a spiritual process of refinement that the nation went through in that crucible, right? But why did it have to be so difficult? And what was the concept of the plagues all about? So first of all, why did it have to be so difficult? It's a question that we all ask about our lives all the time when we go through things that we don't understand. Yitzchak and I were just talking about this the other day, off mic, of course. It was not on a day that we were recording Temple Talk, but we're so friendly that sometimes we talk also not on a Tuesday.
Happens.
Because we go way back. He did save my life when we were both in the IDF many, many years ago. That's an unbelievable story that you'll never hear. But yeah, he took a bullet for me, and I really appreciate that. But anyway, so Yitzchak and I were talking about the fact that I was learning something very, very deep, something that very, very moving, and I wanted to share it with him. And that was a citation from a very important work called Chovot HaLevavot, which is called The Duties of the Heart, which is a holy work in the realm of what's referred to as Musar, which means kind of like ethical study of a person like wanting to work on refining their character and attributes. It's by a great Sephardic sage, by Bachya ibn Pekuda, I believe his name is, and he writes there that the attribute of faith in Hashem, bitachon, which actually is generally translated as trust in God, is not what most people think. Most people think that trust in God means that you say, oh, everything is okay because this is what Hashem wants and therefore I like it. And I believe ultimately that it is for the good, even though I don't see it. Well, that's all true, but that's not really what it means to have bitachon in Hashem. And interestingly, the word bitachon in modern Hebrew means security. Like the security forces, the IDF or the police are called kochot habitachon, the security forces. So bitachon, faith in Hashem, really means to feel secure with Hashem. So he says, that Rabbi Chovot HaLevavot says a very amazing insight into the concept of faith in Hashem, whether you want to call it psychological or emotional. He says, faith in Hashem doesn't mean just saying, okay, everything is good. It means accepting upon yourself that this is the decree of the king. I mean, I might not think it's good. Yeah, ultimately I'll believe that it will be revealed to be good, but I might really, really, really not like it. But you know what? Real faith in Hashem means that I'm going to say, this is what Hashem wants. This is the decree of the king. So when we talk about suffering altogether, we talk about the horrors of the Egyptian exile. And there's all sorts of perushim, all sorts of understandings about why Israel had to go through this and how formative it was and what it did for the birth of the nation, etc., etc. But you know what? Ultimately, it was the decree of Hashem. So that's one idea. And by the way, all during these weeks of we talked. I mentioned the fact that I reminded us that we live according to the Torah portions and the resonation of the Torah portions. All during these initial Torah portions of the book of Shmot, it's called Shovavim Tat, that these Torah portions from Parshat Shmot all the way to Parshat Tetzaveh, it's a special period of time according to the mystical understanding of the inner dimensions of our relationship with time and space and the Torah. It's a special time for for attention paid towards sexual challenges and tests that a person goes through, and every person is tested all the time in that realm of human endeavor, and because of the suffering that Israel went through during that particular period of time, and various aspects of what they were going through that are associated with these Torah portions, this is known to be a time when people have the ability to address these issues and to attempt to improve. I'm sorry?
Resolve?
Yes, resolve and improve themselves. So it's a period of time which has a certain propensity to help purify a person who wants to become pure from from sin in that area. So that's something that's important to note. So again, this week's Torah portion, it's all about the beginning of the redemption. First of all, the redemption really starts to begin in this week's Torah portion. We have the majority of the plagues. So Yitzchak, first I was saying about how, for whatever reason, we had to go through this, and that's what faith in Hashem means, that there's a decree. But now I have this other question: what exactly was accomplished by Hashem's pageantry of bringing about these amazing 10 plagues? Which, by the way, I mean, no matter how you slice it, the 10 plagues are the most, I guess you'd have to say, one of the most significant events in Israel's history and in human history. The 10 plagues were. They were absolutely stop the presses. They were absolutely anti-nature and defying everything about nature. But why couldn't Hashem just have done nothing? I mean, he would have the same ability to redeem Israel and to bring Israel out with an outstretched hand, without the whole, process of these particular plagues and everything and all their manifestation. The things that we learn about them in the oral Torah are so totally outrageous. I mean, the whole idea of the plague of blood, that which was the opening, the salvo. That I'll read it to you. It's a very interesting. Again, I don't want to forget what it was that I was saying. I was saying to you, why do you think it is that Hashem specifically chose the method of the plagues to wake up Egypt, or to demonstrate what it is that he wanted to demonstrate? So he starts by the river, right? So here's what the Midrash says. The custom of the Egyptians used to be that when the river would rise up and become very full in the summertime, they made a very big holiday. And it was very, very ritualistic, and they had all sorts of customs, and they had all sorts of partying. It's kind of like New Year's Eve, the way it's described here in the Midrash. And Paro was there. He was at the head of the whole thing, because as you know, based on the verse in Ezekiel chapter 29 and verse 3, Pharaoh said, Hashem said to Ezekiel, tell Pharaoh, I'm on to you, you, the great serpent. That verse, Ezekiel 29:3, calls Pharaoh the Tanin Hagadol, the great alligator who lives in the Nile, in the river, who says, I am the river, I created it. So Pharaoh, he was like the god of the river, right? He says he created the river. So they would make this big to-do at the riverbank, and he would be there. And they were basically worshiping him and worshiping the river at the same time. So when the plague of blood was brought into being, it was exactly when they were starting that whole party. And Moshe and Aaron are standing there by the river, and Moshe says to Paro, you know what? You ataboteach al hayar, using the same word boteach, right? Bitachon, you have faith in the river. Now it will be turned to blood. So Moshe made the command, and Aaron, as you know, carried it out. And they're all standing there, all see. And Aaron stretches out his rod over all of Egypt, actually, and everything turned to blood. When we say everything turned to blood, you have to understand there's water in everything. There's water in sticks and stones. So everything was dripping with blood. It's like the ultimate horror movie. Mm-hmm. Like a person would sit down on their bed, and like there would be blood dripping from the walls, blood dripping from rocks. But the thing is, like, the same cup of water that a Jew would be holding was water, and then the Egyptian would take it from him, and it would be blood. Or better yet, like the Egyptians were like begging the Israelites for water. So the Israelites said, here's my water. As soon as they touched it, it turned to blood. And moreover, the Egyptian and the Jew would simultaneously raise a vessel to their lips. And as they're drinking, for the Jew it's water, and for the Egyptian it's blood. Unbelievable. So what was the idea of this party at the river, and Pharaoh saying that he's the Nile and he created it again? It's all about him. It's not about Hashem. And at the end of last week's Torah portion, when Moshe says, let my people go, Pharaoh, it's chapter 5 and verse 2.
Mm-hmm.
Pharaoh says, who's Hashem?
Right.
I never heard of him. So the Midrash says that he actually had a book. He had like a registry. He had a book.
An app, let's say. That's out there, an app.
An app. Find a God.
Right.
And he's going through all this. And he says, I see now this one and that one. I don't see any Hashem. So I don't believe in him. Because this is the latest version. My system just updated. I never heard of him. Huh?
Some kind of troll.
So and yet he's standing there at the river and he says, he's the river. He created the river. So this is the whole theme of why the plagues were brought into being in the first place. Because through the plagues, Hashem, if it was just about, again, it goes back to what I was trying to say last week. I hope I'm making sense here. Like, the world was created for man. That's why man cannot become extinct, and that's why man is so important, and he's the center of creation. There's only a world here to demonstrate to man that Hashem exists. That's the whole purpose of our lives. That's why, if you get that out of January 1st, December 31st, January 1st, if you come to that conclusion, okay, then Happy New Year to you. But this is not a free-for-all. We're here because Hashem is here. That's why we're here. And that's what the plagues in Egypt were really all about. Because Hashem proved that anything can happen when he's involved, because it's not about the world without Hashem. It's not about man being at the center. It's about God being at the center.
And God having to make it clear to man whose world it is and on whose behalf the world is. The flip side of not knowing who God is not knowing your place as man. Pharaoh didn't know his place as man.
Exactly. Here's some music there, Yitzchak.
I hear music too, Rabbi.
That must mean we're at the end of the first half of Temple Talk. Stay tuned for part 2. Stay with us, Temple Talk.
Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Reuven with Rabbi Chaim Richman here in Jerusalem, Israel. Today is the 24th day of the month of Tevet, 5779. It's January 1st, 2019. This coming Shabbat, Parashat Va'era, second parasha of the book of Exodus. It's also Shabbat Mavarchin, in which we bless the upcoming new month of Shvat, which is Sunday night, Monday. And we have been talking about Parashat Va'era and the 10 plagues. Actually, in Hebrew, it's the 10 makot, which sort of means strikes. Plague always seems to me a little off in translation, because it's really like 10 blows. And what were the blows to? You asked the question before, Rabbi, why did God have to draw this out? So God, right. Could have snapped his fingers, as it were, and Israel's out. The same question, and it's the exact same question, is why did God take 6 days to create the world? And the answer to that question, which is given, is so that man would be able to comprehend the world that God created, which actually ties into what you were saying, that God created the world for man.
And it's always the bottom line of just about every single lesson of the Torah, is that it's always about man.
Right. So just as God created the world with a certain order and a certain seder, a certain logic for man's benefit that man could comprehend, so too the unraveling of Egypt, or the unraveling of creation, really, so that man, in this case, Pharaoh, would get that God is still the creator and the master of the world. Just as God created the world in 7 days, 6 days, 7 days, God can also undo the world at will.
And not only that, but you know how there's a teaching that the world was created through 10 utterances, 10 statements? This is like the undoing of those 10 statements. And the thing is, I opened up my heart in the deepest way. There was a midrash that I was studying that was saying that these very plagues are going to be repeated in the time of the ultimate redemption as well, to visit it upon the heads of those that are deserving of such. And the bottom line that I'm trying to say about the plagues is that he did it because he can, kind of thing, and because he is. And that was the whole thing here. And it's like this is such a perennial theme. It's just so constant, that like man with his ego trip, like Paro was like the ultimate symbol of denial. It's the old joke. I say it every year. Denial is not a river in Egypt. Denial is, and that's what he was. And that's, he himself said, like, he is the Nile itself. He's the spirit of the Nile. He created the Nile. He's God. I never heard of your God. I'm God, right?
Right.
I mean, it's a bit of an extreme-sounding thing to say, but you know very well that there are plenty of people who feel the same way. And that is the real dilemma of a human being, to realize that we're not God. And that ties in with a little thought that I wanted to share in the beginning of the broadcast, like that to really trust Hashem, to really live with Hashem means that, like I am so not in charge here, but I am feeling secure with Hashem that everything is His decree. I am absolutely not in charge here. I don't even necessarily like it. Yes, I do ultimately believe that everything will be shown to be for the good, because that is the basis of Hashem's conduct in the world. That is the purpose of creation, is Hashem's chesed. But it isn't always clear to us at all. And because it's not according to what we think we need, it's according to what He thinks we need. So this showdown between forces, as it were, between forces, and the whole iconography of Paro looking through like his Rolodex, like I don't see your God mentioned in it, like this.
Or calling upon his magicians, his heart to me, saying anything your God can do, I can do better.
Right. So I want to talk about that also because and they gave up already when it came to something so small like the kinim, the lice.
The lice, the finger
but there's a really interesting thing here when it comes to the frogs. And again, there's so much Torah here to learn about every single one of the plagues. I mean, I encourage everyone to just go and study. There's so much available online in English. There's so much available to understand the nature of Hashem's breaking nature. There's a word, supernatural, which is generally defined as something of or pertaining to like mystical forces, the occult, or something like that. But that's not how I would use the word here. Here it's like super nature. It is like superimposed on nature. It is above nature. The expression our sages use is that Hashem, as it were, broke the bank. He actually just defied the very rules that He created. And again, they're just go and study, because there's so much about every single one of the plagues. Why these particular things? There's so much about I just mentioned a couple of interesting ideas about the manifestation of the plague of blood, but the frogs, right? Like, what's with the frogs? Why frogs? So there's so many midrashic accounts about how the Egyptians actually forced the Jews to go and gather like frogs and vermin, and it was just another task that they gave them to subjugate them, and how they were berating them constantly and waking them up in the middle of the night and making them go to work and all sorts of things, so that Hashem sent the frogs, whose voices are like constantly annoying. But then there's something that I was learning about how the nature of frogs is usually to avoid people and not to like come out and be like everywhere, but to like there's a word for it, a certain type of animal behavior that avoids contact with people. And here they're coming out. So then there's this really interesting verse, right? here we go. In the beginning of chapter 8, Hashem said to Moshe, say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff over the rivers, over the canals, and over the reservoirs, and raise up the frogs over the land of Egypt. Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frog infestation ascended and covered the land of Egypt. The necromancers, here's the verse that I wanted, the necromancers did the same through their incantations, and they brought up the frogs upon the land of Egypt. And then Pharaoh summoned Moshe and Aaron and said, entreat Hashem that he remove the frogs from me and my people, and I'll send the people out. Liar. But that's not the thing. The interesting verse here is, what does it mean the necromancers did the same thing through their incantations and they brought up the frogs? First of all, there already were frogs.
Right.
Second of all, like, what are they accomplishing? They're bringing more frogs?
It's what do they call a self-goal.
Right, shot themselves in the foot.
Right.
They're bringing more frogs? Is this what they were trying to do? So Rav Hirsch, I was learning, one of the commentators, the beautiful Rav Hirsch says a very interesting thing. He may not be the only one who brings this down. He says what the verse is talking about, he traces the whole etymology of the words to prove that this is what it's talking about. The necromancers were trying to get rid of the frogs. They were doing certain motions that they were trying to get rid of. They weren't trying to bring more. They weren't trying to, like, because we always look at it like, oh, you can do that, I can do that.
Right.
And first of all, there is something to that in many of the instances, because what the whole idea, Pharaoh lived in a world of illusion. He was the king of illusion. He was the king of spin. And his whole thing was like, what you're doing isn't even real. Like, I can do that too. Like, I also live in a shadowy world. Like, so you make an illusion, I'll make an illusion. But in this case, his people...
Anything you can elude, I can elude better.
Okay. But in this case, they were actually trying to, like, diminish the frogs, get rid of them. And instead, when they did their incantations and when they did their hand motions and things that they thought would make them recede, even more came. And that's why Pharaoh gave up there.
Nice.
But the thing is, again, this is a basic thread in everything that we're discussing today, whether it's the calendrial date, or whether it's the Torah portion, or whether it's the challenge that every single one of us faces. And by the way, this is all a template for all of our lives, because there are miracles every day. There are the real miracles, the Ramban says. He says, each one of us, our hidden miracles are like the revealed miracles. And we all deal with the same kind of challenge of facing up to Hashem, of taking accountability, which is the secret of Rosh Hashanah, and of not denying. And that's what this was all about, because Egypt was the very heart of total denial.
Speaking of denial, and speaking of the 10 plagues, which are all, could even be seen, could be categorized as 10 environmental catastrophes, which befell Egypt. But, we have so many environmental disasters today, and there's so much controversy about them, and so much disagreement as to what they are signaling. Do they mean this or do they mean that? And
You're saying that the 10 plagues are the forerunner of global warming?
And that's I wouldn't want to get into that right now. Give me a minute here. But there was one instance, it happened more than once, but one thing besides the 10 environmental plagues, which is very, very interesting, which there's a lot of question about and comment about, which is, we know that after each plague, after each time that Pharaoh would say, okay, Moshe, this time I'm letting you go, then Pharaoh would harden his heart, right? But once in a while, there's a few plagues where it says God hardened Pharaoh's heart, and some people say, wait a minute, what happened to Pharaoh's free will? So the one thing that we have exclusive that God gives us, we have free will, which is why God needs to go to these, as it were, great lengths in order to get it through our thick skulls that he's in charge. But I think, just as you said, that God upended all the rules of nature, he also took a moment, a few times, to upend this all, that even your own self-identity, your own ego, your own independent will is ultimately a gift from me, and I can take it away. And you, Pharaoh, who think that you are not merely my equal, but my superior, that very self-identity I can eradicate in a second. And you're in the canvas. I already knocked you out, but I'm just like picking you up again for one more blow because I can. And I think that was that's one of the biggest lessons. That even who we are, even that little space of autonomy that's ours, that's a gift outright. Even that can be taken away if we forget where we come from and who our Creator is and what this world's about.
Because like the hardest thing for a person, and one of the greatest challenges, is to relinquish control. And to be able to realize, again, it's that whole I and thou thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is always the theme of our lives. And this is the reason for creation, for us to come to this realization, like, I'm not in control. I'm not even in control of my own life. I'm not in control of anything. Hashem is in control. And this has been the human condition ever since the Eitz Hadat, ever since the tree of knowledge, the desire to be in control. Because for most people, bitachon, again, security, means like that, like I have my macaroni and cheese at 6 o'clock, like I know exactly what you know what I'm saying, like I know what to expect, and I'm in the driver's seat here, and it goes according to what I am programming it into the program. Right. But that's not the case at all. And that's why I say, like, real bitachon, real faith in Hashem means to accept, like, Hashem is king. So this thing with wanting to be in control, it's a very natural thing. And I'll give you a beautiful example, again, from the Holy Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. She has a very interesting commentary on the sixth plague. Sixth plague is boils. And here's something that if you don't learn his commentary, he recites all sorts of interesting sources. Hashem said to Moshe and Aaron, I'm reading verse 8 of chapter 9, take for yourselves handfuls of furnace soot, and let Moshe hurl it heavenward before Pharaoh's eyes. It will become dust over the entire land of Egypt, and it will become boils, erupting into blisters on man and beast. So what happened? Hashem is saying, take this soot from the furnace, throw it up into the air, and then when that settles, everybody's going to have the boils. Why that? Like, Hashem could make boils with, first of all, why boils? But Hashem could make boils without the circus act of taking the soot from the furnace and throwing it up. Like, Hashem could say, poof, there's boils. Right. Like, what is that? So Hirsch says the most unbelievable thing. He says that the cure, the remedy, the treatment that was used for these kind of blistering sores would be to rub that kind of soot on them. So, like, open up your heart in the deepest way. This is so unbelievable. We're saying here, like, take that very thing that is the cure, and from that comes the disease. Like, everything is totally topsy-turvy. Right. You think you know what to do? You're going to consult grandma's book of homeopathy? You think you can handle this? No, I'm in charge here. Hashem is saying, like, the one thing that you would have thought would be your hope to get around me, to circumvent my decree, to show that you're still in charge, that you're calm, you're still in control. No, that's exactly what's causing it.
That one thing is human science, is science and medicine and technology is basically, in a nutshell there, the soot. Because that was the remedy. Man figured out that remedy. So he's saying that your greatest minds and your workarounds for all the disasters that you bring upon yourself, and then come up with something to solve that, which just creates a different
workaround.
Yeah. It's
all this
it's all
is the
for naught.
template, for all of us. That there's so much incredible wisdom that we reveal from this process.
And this is a necessary process of liberation. Israel could not have gotten out of Egypt without this liberation from the slavery of the mentality that we're in charge.
Mental slavery.
Mental slavery.
Right.
That we are in charge, that we have something to say, that we can always come up with the workaround, with the answer, that we can get by on our own devices.
Well, Hashem is the answer. And again, this is all one continuous, seamless theme that we're discussing today, and I want to take it now into a very practical realm. Speaking of workarounds, and speaking of the question of whether or not we realize the purpose of creation and what Hashem is telling us, and how all of this is about realizing that He's the King. We're currently in quite a tumultuous a time of, I would almost describe it as a certain degree of chaos that we're experiencing now, with the fact that the Knesset has been dissolved and we are going to elections on April 9th, a week before Passover.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect time.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's always, I always find it in my almost 40 years of being an Israeli, I always find it a very difficult thing to live through, the Israeli election season, because it's full of a lot of acrimony and a lot of infighting and a lot of just divisiveness. It really bothers me, the divisiveness, and I'm feeling it already with the new party that's been formed, with the polls that stoke fear and feelings of vulnerability and inertia, and I don't know what. There's just so many conflicting things going on, and I won't wax eloquent about the Israeli electoral system and all sorts of things like that. The question really, in my mind, is very simply, like, what are we looking for in our leadership? What are we looking for in our direction here? What is it about? What is it about? Is it about Hashem or not? Like, who has the nerve to talk that way in the political spectrum? That's what this is really all about, and that's who we're waiting for. We're waiting for a real hero who's going to be the one who's going to say, we need Hashem in this picture. That's what this is all about.
I need Hashem in my coalition.
Yeah, we need the coalition, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's all very apropos to me, because the real secret to our survival and our redemption is our devotion to Hashem's purpose in creation, which is finding Him in everything. And
if there is a bit of sunshine here, pardon that expression, because a bit of sunshine in terms of hearing directly from God and not being dependent on politicians and all their wiles and all their machinations, is that we've been blessed up through today, this winter, with tremendous rainfall, which I always see as just like, it's like a direct line from, I don't know what we're doing right, but we're doing something right, and we should keep doing it right, because, apropos of natural environmental disasters and all sorts of horrible things, we have been blessed so far, and the winter is still ahead of us. The next few months,
wonderful rains,
we still need rain, but we've been blessed with tremendous rain, and God willing, it will keep falling.
And I don't know anybody, and I was talking about this with my holy wife, I don't know anybody whose house isn't leaking. And that
I'm not going to say a word.
That is just so, that is just so wonderful. Like, let it come in. It's
right.
Is it annoying? No, not at all.
I'll take the rain. I'll take the water, and Pharaoh can have the blood. I don't mind a little water, little dampness in my house. But
so as far as this whole conundrum that we're in, as far as choosing new leadership or the same leadership or whatever combination thereof, to me the only real criteria is what is bringing us closer to our goal, our destiny as a people, to reveal Hashem's presence in this world. That is the primary purpose of the existence of the State of Israel. It is to reveal Hashem's presence in this world, and whoever is going to bring us closer to that goal deserves my vote.
Well, there you go. That's a tough choice, though. Given the choice that we're given, it's not always so easy.
Is anybody campaigning on that platform? Or would that be a one-issue candidate?
I think there are some people who are more or less trying to say that. But the question is, who are they really speaking for? Are you speaking for Hashem, or are you just speaking for yourself? Anyway, so we're going through 7 of the 10 plagues, 7 of the 10 strikes against man's sense of self-importance and invincibility and control. And stay tuned, because next week, the following week, we have the final 3, which tips the balance.
And it's all leading towards redemption. It's all leading towards marching towards the promised land and building the holy temple, which is the whole purpose of everything, of revealing Hashem's presence in this world. That's what this is all about. That's what we're all about as a people, as a nation. And that is the ultimate relinquishing of our crown and giving the crown to Hashem.
Yeah, that's the Mikdash, the temple. That's the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and that is exactly what Pharaoh proved incapable of doing time and time again, until ultimately he just wanted to save his own skin and allow the Israelites to leave.
Enjoy the last week of the beautiful month of Tevet.
And the first week of 2019 is all good. Thanks for being with us, Temple Talk.